We were married for 20 years, but were struggling with infertility. We kept trying in the hopes of eventually having a child. At 42, I found out he had a vasectomy before we ever met. I was 21 when I met him. He was 23, and already felt like he had the world figured out. Not in a cocky way, just solid. The kind of man who never made you feel like you had to earn his attention. We were friends first, then best friends, then everything else. We got married 3 years later. That was 2 decades ago. We have the kind of marriage people envy quietly, not loud. Not performative. No grand romantic gestures. But every morning, he brings me coffee without asking how I take it, because he already knows. And every night, I rest my leg across his without thinking. We are practiced in each other's presence. Familiar in the best way. It's not perfect, but it's safe. And that's a kind of love that makes you believe anything is possible. We always talked about having kids. Always, even when we couldn't afford them. Even when our friends started waiting until things were stable, we said we'd figure it out. We always did. But time got slippery. First it was graduate school, then new jobs, then a lease that was too expensive, then trying harder, and then stopping. Not officially. Not with a fight. Just a long pause we never fully unpaused. We did the tests, the blood work, the hormone panels, the invasive conversations with strangers in sterile white rooms. Unexplained infertility. That was the diagnosis, which really just means we don't know why this isn't working, but it's probably her. He never said that, but sometimes I heard it anyway. I remember one night, maybe 10 years ago, sitting on the bathroom floor with a negative test in one hand and a pregnancy announcement from my cousin on my phone. He found me like that, didn't say a word, just sat beside me and pulled me into him. I thought, God, I picked the right person. Even if we never had a child, I had him, and that would be enough. Only it wasn't. At least not forever. Not because I didn't love him enough, but because a part of me never stopped believing it could still happen. That I could still be a mother, that we weren't done. I asked him once years later if he still wanted it too. He said, I want whatever makes you happy. It was the right answer, maybe too right. We settled into the kind of rhythm long married couples do. Work, dinner, soft laughter, shared Netflix queues, holidays with nieces and nephews who started calling us the fun ones. Everyone assumed we had chosen to be child-free. We never corrected them. It was easier that way. But lately, something shifted in me. Maybe it was turning 42, or it was seeing my younger sister announce her third, or it was nothing more than the ache I'd taught myself to ignore, finally pushing its way back to the surface. I brought it up one night while we were folding laundry. Do you think we waited too long? He paused, then smiled gently. I think there's still time. He said we could try again, that we should, if it still mattered to me, and God help me, I lit up. I hadn't let myself imagine it in years, but suddenly I was charting, researching, spiraling into late-night message boards. I bought supplements. I pulled out the books. I found a new OBGYN, and he smiled through it all. He always smiled. We made a plan. Nothing too intense. Just effort. Intention. He said he'd go get a checkup, just to see where things are at. I kissed him and said, this time is going to be different. He said, I think so too. And I believed him. Because why wouldn't I? Oh, I started walking more. My doctor always said exercise would help optimize fertility. So I walked before work, after dinner. Around the block on nights I couldn't sleep. It wasn't just about my body. It was about getting ready for something I didn't think I'd get to want again. I found the old ovulation tracker tucked into a file in the back of the closet. There were notes scribbled in the margins, hope disguised as data. I flipped through the pages like they belonged to someone else. A younger version of me, more fragile, but somehow more fearless. I threw it away. Then bought a new one. He was supportive, helpful, smiling, always smiling. Need me to pick anything up? What time's your appointment? Want me to drive you? He said all the right things, and for the First time in years, I started to believe him again. I looked into acupuncture. I know, pseudoscience maybe. But women on forums swore by it. I asked him what he thought. He shrugged and said, "If it helps, it helps." That was enough. My sister came over one afternoon with her youngest. He sat in our living room coloring. We made coffee, talked about everything but babies until I told her we were trying again. She blinked. "You sure that's what he wants too?" I laughed. He's the one who brought it up. That was a lie, but a gentle one. I started taking supplements again, fish oil, CoQ10, vitamin D. All the things I used to believe in before belief became exhausting. This time, it didn't feel desperate. It felt intentional. Because now I had a partner who said he was all in. I asked him about his doctor's appointment. He nodded. Still trying to find the right one. But I'll schedule something soon. I said okay, then made dinner. It didn't even register. Not really, because love makes you believe in later. He bought me a small bouquet of tulips on the way home from work, just handed them over with a smile and said, "Felt like a flower day." My heart swelled. Tulips were always my favorite. I didn't know then that guilt can look like thoughtfulness. One night I pulled out an old box of baby things, gifts from friends. A onesie I bought after our second round of IUI. A stuffed giraffe. I found in a shop in Asheville. I held each item like it had memory stitched into the fabric. He walked in, froze, then smiled. I forgot we still had that stuff. I smiled back and started sorting what we'd keep. We sat on the couch together, watching a documentary about parenthood. He leaned into me. I rested my head on his chest. Someone on screen said, "There's no perfect time. You just leap." He kissed my forehead, and I thought, we're finally leaping. I had no idea I'd already jumped, and he was never planning to catch me. I was looking for batteries. That's the part I keep thinking about, not snooping. Not digging, just looking for double A's in the drawer we both dump junk into. I moved a rubber band ball, some birthday candles, and then I saw it, a pale yellow envelope, tucked under a faded takeout menu. I didn't recognize the name on the eye. Letterhead at first, Urology and Wellness Associates. I unfolded it. The paper was soft with age. It read, "Post-vasectomy follow-up." The date? March 2002. I blinked, read it again, and then just stood there. I sat at the kitchen table with it in my hands for almost an hour. No tears, no screaming, just static. Like my brain had been unplugged. Because everything, the vitamins, the tracking, the hope, all of it had been built on a lie. He hadn't just changed his mind, he'd made sure it wasn't even possible. When he walked through the door that evening, I didn't even hide it. I was still sitting at the table, letter in front of me. He paused. Looked at it, looked at me, didn't speak, didn't even try to lie. "When?" I asked. "Before I met you," he said. He said it like that made it better. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't think I'd want kids." "So why didn't you say that?" "Because then I met you, and I thought, maybe I could change my mind. And then I didn't. And by then, you were already hoping, and I didn't know how to take that away from you." He tried to say it was kindness, that he didn't want to break me, that he thought maybe we'd be okay anyway. I stared at him. I wasn't broken, I was willing, and you let me believe I just wasn't enough. He said he thought maybe I'd get tired of trying, that eventually I'd just stop, and we'd settle into the life we had. I said, "You let me carry grief for something that was never even possible." I packed a bag that night, just one, toiletries, sweatpants, a hoodie I'd had since college. He didn't try to stop me, just stood in the doorway and said, "I'm sorry." I nodded and walked out. My sister answered on the first ring, didn't ask questions, just said, "Come here." And I drove. The whole way there, I kept thinking, he didn't steal motherhood from me. He stole my right to grieve it honestly, and I don't know if I'll ever forgive that. The first night at my sister's, I didn't sleep. I lay on the pull-out couch staring at the popcorn ceiling, listening to the hum of her fridge. 20 years. Gone, and no one to scream at but myself. She didn't ask for details, just made coffee, slid a plate of toast across the table, and let me sit in silence. That's why I came to her. Not because she'd fix it, but because she wouldn't try to. I kept thinking of all the times I said, maybe it's my body. Maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe it's not meant to be. And how he'd just nod. Let me take the blame, hold my own heartbreak like it was mine alone to carry. I found an old journal in my overnight bag, one I hadn't written in for years. The first entry I opened was from 2011. I had a dream I was holding a baby. I woke up crying. He kissed me and said we'd get there. I believed him. I ripped the page out and threw it away. Not because it hurt, but because I didn't recognize that version of myself anymore. He texted, not a long message, just, I hope you're safe. I love you. I stared at it for 20 minutes and typed nothing back, because I knew if I wrote anything, it would come out like, I thought I was safe too. My sister offered wine that night. I said no, not because I didn't want it, but because I was afraid I'd say everything out loud. And once I did, I wouldn't be able to take it back. His mom called me. She didn't know what happened, just said he was quiet and wanted to give us space. I almost told her, but stopped. Because if I said it out loud, if I told someone what he'd done, then it would become real in a way I couldn't unlive. I took a walk alone. No music, no destination, just my body moving because my mind couldn't sit still. I passed a dad pushing a stroller. He looked exhausted, happy, and I hated that I envied him. I hated that I was still hoping, even now, that someday it could still be me. I found myself standing in a grocery store aisle staring at baby wipes, just standing there. My sister found me 10 minutes later. Didn't ask why, just walked me out of the store, hand on my back. That night, I cried for the first time since leaving. Not quietly, not into a pillow. Full body sobs, ugly and guttural and real. My sister held me like I was collapsing, because I was, because I finally let myself say it out loud. He took 20 years from me. And worse, and I still miss him. He asked to talk. My sister left the house so I could decide whether or not to open the door. I almost didn't, but something in me needed to see his face again, if only to prove to myself that I could look at him without reaching for the version of him that no longer existed. He looked older, tired in a way I hadn't seen before. He didn't try to hug me, didn't cry, just sat across from me and said, I never meant to hurt you. And I said, you didn't just hurt me, you built a life on hurting me, quietly, every day, with a smile. He said he'd looked into reversal procedures. He said we could try, if I wanted. I just stared at him, because it wasn't about trying anymore. It was about the fact that I spent 20 years loving a man who let me beg the universe for something he already took away. Do you still love me? He asked. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because I finally did. I don't think I know who I loved, because I never got the truth, just the version you thought I could survive. He left quietly, didn't beg, didn't plead. Maybe part of him knew this was always going to catch up to him. The only thing he said at the door was, I wish I'd told you. Every day I didn't made it harder, and now, it's unforgivable. I didn't say he was right, but I didn't disagree. I filed for divorce a week later. The lawyer was gentle, the paperwork was clinical, the grief was loud, but the decision was silent. My sister drove me to the courthouse. We didn't talk on the way there. We got coffee afterward. She asked if I wanted to go through with it. I said, I already did. Now I'm just putting it on paper. He texted one last time, you'll always be the best part of my life. I deleted it without replying because I didn't want to be the best part of someone who never gave me a whole one, packed up the nursery box, the giraffe, the onesie, the scrapbook with baby names we liked once upon a time. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't take it with me either. I left it in the attic of the house we built together. Let him live with the ghost since he made it. The day the divorce finalized, I sat alone in a little apartment with no furniture yet. A folding chair, a bag of clothes, a lamp, just peace and quiet. And after everything, that was enough to breathe again. My new apartment smelled like paint and dust. It had no curtains, no couch, just an air mattress and a chipped table I found on Facebook Marketplace. But it was mine, and nothing in it lied to me. I didn't unpack the first week. I just sat, drank tea on the floor, listened to the city sounds. There was no quiet like the quiet of no one asking you to pretend you're okay. I stopped marking my cycle, stopped taking the vitamins, stopped reading the forums. I didn't stop wanting, not fully, but I stopped bargaining with the universe. There's a difference. My sister offered to set me up with someone. I said no, not because I was bitter, but because I wasn't ready to be looked at, not yet, not by anyone who didn't already know what I lost. I started volunteering, not with babies, not with families, with rescue animals, things that came in broken, quiet, fragile, and didn't ask anything of me except gentleness. Sometimes when I woke up too early, I'd imagine what it would have been like: a baby crying, a hand on my shoulder, a morning full of chaos and joy and exhaustion. Then I'd get up, feed the cat, and fold my own blanket. Motherhood never came, but I was still here. He emailed me once, said he kept the nursery box, said he understood if I hated him. I didn't reply, because I didn't hate him, I just no longer had anything left to say. I got a part-time job at a bookstore, stacked fiction, brewed tea, remembered how much I used to love stories. On slow days, I'd sit behind the counter and write pieces of my own. Not about him, not about us, just little scenes where women got to choose what happened to them. Healing wasn't a moment. It was a long, brutal, silent collection of non-moments, of waking up and realizing I didn't cry that morning, of walking past the baby aisle and only flinching once, of saying I used to be married without my voice breaking. I walked by a park one afternoon and sat on a bench, watched kids run and fall and laugh, let myself smile, not with regret, not with envy, just a soft kind of peace. There are things I will never have, but there are things I can still become, and this time I'll do it on my own terms.